Hello and welcome to another episode of Zion's Finest. I am JK, and I am joined by the very beautiful Samuel K. Sweeten.
Always with the excellent compliments, JK.
Well, you're just too good to not give them out. Today we're going to be on the verge of greatness. We're doing a box review. We're talking about the Krennic box, which came at a perfect time. We're right in the middle of Andor season, and this is coming soon. We have not actually gotten this one released yet. It'll be very close by the time this actually releases. But this is an interesting box, and I am just very excited to talk about it. First and foremost, let's go over the idea of the box. Krennic is a 9-point primary. Empire loves them some odd-numbered primaries that bring 2 force. Whether that's 7s and 2s and 9, they're all over the place. And it's fascinating. They have a 5-point secondary in the Death Trooper Specialist, and they have competing Stormtrooper supports, which we have Death Trooper proper, just the Death Trooper, not special, not elite, just plain, and the Shore Troopers. And it is a really interesting box. It looks like it's going to do some different things. Sam, you've seen the box. We haven't really played with it. You've played against it. Give me your initial impressions of the Verge of Greatness box.
Yeah, I think this is another really interesting Empire box. As you said, it kind of plays an Empire's theme of none of them can use the Force except for Darth Vader, apparently, right? They all bring, a lot of them bring 2. But
Dark side.
Yeah, this is a really interesting box. I think the support options that it brings are super interesting. I think Krennic has some really interesting options on his figure, and I think having 2 5-point secondaries to match with Vader 3 really opens up, again, interesting list building options. So I'm excited for this box as a whole. I don't play a lot of Empire competitively, but I enjoy playing Empire casually. So I'm excited to see what this does on the table.
Yeah, this is going to be... There's a lot that this opens up in an interesting way. This obviously is a juxtaposed list of Cassian, who is also a 9 and 2. I don't know how much they built that way versus kind of having it just fall out, but I do love the symmetrical opposition.
Yeah, Cassian and Krennic, when you look at their cards side by side, here's a fun thing for you to do later that we won't do on the podcast, but to the listener, grab their cards, look at them side by side, and consider how both are designed so they both counter each other. So both of them have ways to punish the other characters. So they're kind of meant to go against each other.
That is a fascinating idea. All right, let's start. We're going to talk a little bit about Krennic. We're going to talk about the Specialist, their primary, secondary units. The Krennic is a 9 health. He is going to be a little squishy. He is going to be a backline figure. He has a standard move and attack active ability. Keep in mind that this costs 1 force. We're going to talk about why that is important / interesting in 1 second. He has 2 reactive abilities that are really cool. We're not going to get into them too much, even though his whole kit kind of works together, but we would just read that. What is interesting about him is his identification, peace and security for the galaxy. If he is, it's the classic one side versus the other stances. High aspiration is really cool because you can't lose an objective. It is another lockdown ability that they are becoming a little bit more common, and it makes for some interesting decisions. Granted, he's not necessarily a frontline figure, but you can do it. And his other side is arrogance, which is the first time you use something, you get a force discount. And the first time you use his force ability, you get a discount. It's not a cam everywhere list, which again is important when you look back at his abilities on the tree. Deploy is 1 force, concerns are warranted, which is a momentum stopper, kind of a revenge trigger. And then another is it's a different kind of revenge. But it basically takes all of his things, which were 4 force, and brings him down to a total cost of 1. Sam, high-level thoughts on Krennic, especially how his peace and security for the galaxy works all around.
Yeah, so thinking of peace and security, he gives you a 1-turn, like, super mandate / lockdown effect. It's essentially saying, hey, Krennic's worth infinite number of people in this objective for this turn only. So that's really good, but it only lasts for 1 turn unless you pair it with something else. Like if it can be used to, let's say there was a tie on an objective and your opponent's currently controlling it. Well, then Krennic goes, he's already on there for the tie. He uses that identity to take that, and then it'll be yours in the future. But if it's something like it's Krennic versus two enemies, they're just going to auto flip it back on their next turn. So that's something to be aware of. Additionally, he's kind of slow. So if you want to just have your infinite mandate ability, he's not going to be able to take whatever point you want. He's going to advance somewhere, and if the point's not in range of an advance, he's not going to get there. And I think it's hard to talk about how good his force discount ability side is without looking at the tree too. So I'll touch on that more when we go over the tree. But the force discounts are real, and you really need them to use his kit when he's only bringing 2 force.
His stand here amongst my achievement is a bonus. I don't know that we have
like Cam or Lumi, right? So
yeah.
he gets to dash and make an attack, I believe, which is very, very good.
Yes. Whatever the opposite is of a revenge trigger, a salt in the wound trigger. I don't know what we have called them yet. We probably need a word for that.
I think
he has
that trigger is a great term.
A wound trigger is what that is. The Death Trooper Specialist has a lot of interesting things. We could probably spend a lot of time talking about him. He gets to force people around and give them exposes. He gets to double shoot, so he has an extra attack with his unrelenting assault. He has protection, he has immunity to expose. But what I think is really interesting is his oppression ability, which is start of the activation, each character in this unit may dash. And then if you're within 3 of an enemy unit, you give them strain or pin, which, by the way, pin is really good. Strain is really good. And it's within 3 versus within 2. And so I was recently doing heat maps, and the difference of 3 versus 2, I know we know that it's big, but obviously using your geometry of pi r squared, the difference of an extra inch on the board is a significant amount of range that you're going to be able to make up.
Well,
Sam,
it's not just 1 inch, it's 3 inches.
Yeah, sorry. It is a huge gain from that. When you see the Death Trooper Specialist, what are you feeling? There's always going to be a comparison between him and the Death Trooper Escort. Give me a little compare and contrast between the two.
Yeah, so Oppression is great in that it gives out a condition. It pales to Escort in that Escort can move somebody else, right? Whereas Specialist is just moving himself. However, Specialist has an active ability that he can use to move someone else. Right?
Yeah, that's Imperial Brutality.
Yeah, so they're both going to be able to move themselves and a friend. The difference is where you're spending force for it, right? Death Trooper Escort will spend force to move himself, whereas Specialist will spend force to move the friend. And then in exchange for your pseudo-revenge advance trigger that Escort has, you get to make a second attack on your turn for 1 force, which is impactful. Making 2 attacks, be able to shove off a weak support unit, can really help clear off a point that can allow for more dynamic plays than secondaries are typically used to. And Immunity Expose can pair well with his own abilities. If he uses Imperial Brutality on himself, he's not actually going to get the expose from that. So there's some interesting things there. I do want to point out Oppression is actually very similar to Lobot's tactic. So if you've had a lot of experience playing Lobot, I think that tactic is going to feel very familiar.
Great. Yeah, I really have not dove into these guys for a hot minute, and I haven't played against them, but that's a great comparison right there. Okay, we're going to talk about trees. Obviously, the 2 sets of trees, we're going to have a little bit more coming back because Unrelenting Assault is an interesting part. First off, Krennic. All right, he has 2 trees. He has 2 wildly different trees. High Aspirations is just better. It's everything about it. Everything about it. Better expertise. He has better damage. He has pushes. He has actual defense. The only thing that it's kind of a slight down, I mean, obviously it is a slight down, is that it's range 4 versus 5. But if you want something in High Aspirations, it's there. He has 7-8 damage on his attacks. He has a reposition on 4. There's just a lot to like about High Aspirations. That being said, it doesn't come with a force discount, and so the other side is going to be better. Now, Arrogance is it's It is a side, it is a stance by every measure.
Yeah.
It has a force discount. Okay, every time you're on Arrogant's side, you have a force discount. He has one active ability, which is deploy the garrison. It's the attack and move. If you're on the side, you already have the force discount, so it's actually a free ability anyway, assuming he's not wounded, I know. But that literally makes the third step superfluous if he's not wounded down the middle. It's a funny side. It doesn't have crits. Its defense is hot garbage. It's so interesting. And it's really fun because, by the way, Krennic is not supposed to be a fighter. He's supposed to enable and turn on everyone else. I don't know if he does enough of it. Sam, when you're looking at this, what are you seeing? Am I missing anything, or is it just a weird thing?
You're right. Arrogance is an awful tree, especially for a primary. When you look at it and you see how many boxes only have a single symbol in them, it's more reminiscent of a support, right? Like, you have 2 boxes on the tree that are just a single damage, 2 more that are just a single condition. So that's not what you want to see. So Arrogance as a stance is pretty weak, and he's tissue paper on that side. He is going to die with that self-preservation that's there. He's not actually that worried about his own preservation. He's just there to be blasted. The force discount is huge because he literally will not be able to use his kit without that discount. So you have this push and pull of, do you want him to use force abilities, or do you want him to have an actual useful tree and some sort of defense? I think that his force abilities are really good. So typically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start in high aspirations, make an attack there, and then flip to arrogance so that you can be using his reactive abilities outside of his turn at a discount. And then late game, flip back to high aspirations when you must cap a point. That's where I think you're going to be. But it's going to feel bad because he's going to be really squishy. But that's just how it is.
Yeah, he has the 5 die attacks, which is his wound trigger, right? Is you're getting 2 steps in there. That's kind of typically the thing. You want an expertise to turn into 2 symbols, and you're probably going to get 2 steps. That's kind of just how the math works out. It's obviously not exact, but we are not worried about exacts. In Arrogance, the side that you basically need to be on for that to happen, you can either get 2 in a push. 2 in a push is perfectly fine. Or 3 damage or 2 in a strain. But honestly, you don't want to go further down the list on those. Like, there's nothing else out there. 3 damage and pin on 3 steps is 3 damage and a push on 3 is worse than a Magna Guard. It's just, it is just so weird. I would love to be proven wrong and have something fun come out of this, but man,
I think he's good. Don't get me wrong, because I think his force abilities are that strong.
They're so good.
His arrogance tree is just bad. So
the whole side, like, that's the funny thing is you basically need to be in the worst side. Whereas take a figure like Kit, who his better side gives him the better ability. His Shi-Chu side gives him that steadfast versus protection. Steadfast is better than protection, so you want to be in the better side anyway. This is just the complete opposite. You want to be in arrogance for all the things, but you need to be in high aspiration to do literally anything. But I agree. I think he's going to be good. I think there's going to be fun stuff to do with him. It's just so weird. It feels like it should have another branch somewhere in the tree. If, for those of you who don't know, he has just the 3 forks. It's kind of like a big pitchfork. He starts at 2 damage, and then he can go up, middle, or bottom, and that's it. Seems like at some point they should fork and let you have some choice, but that is what it is. Let's move on, and let's go into the Death Trooper Specialist. Got to remember those. Specialist versus elite versus regular. His tree is Callus's tree, right, Sam?
Yeah, it's Callus' tree exactly, except for on his bottom track, he has a strain on step 4 and Callus has a pin on step 4. Everything else is exactly the same.
Okay. It's also very close to the DTE with basically, instead of a damage, there's a condition in there. And instead of the later push on the top side, there is something else. I think there actually might not even be a damage in there. But they're very close. It's really interesting that they did it the way that they did it. He has a great 5 dice expertise in terms of when he's getting that deploy the garrison attack from Krennic, that 2 for 1 is always just so good, and he wants 2 steps everywhere he goes. 2 steps for 4 damage, fantastic. 2 steps for 2 damage and 2 pushes, it's fantastic.
I have a question, JK. I might need to review the card on Krennic. Can Krennic move a secondary for deploy the garrison?
You know what? Let's go back and figure it out. Because I don't. Oh, it is a supporting character.
Okay.
Man, never mind. Everything
But
about.
he still does 5 dice attacks on his own turn, right?
Yes.
He has Unrelenting Assault, so he's still getting those 5 dice attacks.
Yep. So, yeah, not deploy the garrison. Unrelenting Assault is where he gets his 5 dice attack. I knew it was coming from somewhere. He has really good defense 1 for 1, 2 for 2, and then 3 with the dash back. Realistically, the 3 getting the dash back, it's not going to happen that often on 5 block, but it's a really good defensive tree. It would be really nice if you had 9 health instead of 8, but there we are. Sam, what are you thinking with the tree here?
So I think this tree is super solid. I've played lots of Callus, and I think Callus has a good tree, and I think this guy also has a good tree. Shove, double recover into a strain is super useful. I think the Callus tree is probably better because the pin, I prefer pin over strain, but strain's still really good. And then he can just load damage on the other side. Like 3 steps for 5 damage and an expose is super solid. So for the 5 dice attacks, you can probably get 2 shoves if you're not attacking like Mando or something, right? Just, hey, here's 2 shoves and 2 damage. That's great. And then for your big attacks, you can rack up more damage or get some heals in there with it too. He does have protection, which makes that
Yes.
good defense, that pretty good defensive expertise plus that 8 health go further. So I like this tree and I like these stats, and they feel like the stats that a 5-point character should have. It doesn't feel like he's under par. That said, he's very similar to Death Trooper Escort, who's only 4 points, but who feels a bit over par. So he's always going to be drawing those comparisons, and it's going to be hard for me to get a real bead on the two before I get this one on the table. But that's always the worry, right? It's just, is the 4-point Death Trooper just the one you want to play most?
Yep. And obviously, with the patch coming in to however many weeks we are from now, early May, that there's no reason why the DTE might not have their price adjusted, have some things adjusted. I haven't heard that he's going to. I don't want to alarm anyone, but he, in theory, could be in that range. That being said, yeah, you're always going to have the comparison. I think getting to run both is going to be good. He also is going to attack and to expose a lot of the time with his ability, and being able to have the option of turning 2, of throwing someone into range of an objective, killing the other person on the objective, and then going to a different point, getting to turn 2 is going to be a big thing for him. That's where he's going to really make some cheddar. And I think he's going to be good. I think he's right. He is exactly what a 5-point character should be. I think that's just completely correct.
I do want to note interesting play pattern with the expose that he can give. You're going to be able to choose whether you're adding that expose to his 5 dice attack or his regular attack, right? Because if you expose one character, he has to shoot 2 different ones. So if you just want one really big attack against someone, you can do a big attack into the exposed target. If you want 2 smaller amounts of successes, if you just want double shove on 2 different people, big attack into one, small attack into the exposed target, you get both of those through pretty consistently. So some optionality there.
Yep. And with Krennic, you have all the force.
If you're arrogant.
We'll figure that out. All right. Let's move on. One of the big pieces of this box is going to be the supporting units. They're going to combat for each other because they are very similar in a lot of ways. They are both stormtroopers. They're both troopers. The Death Troopers have a Death Trooper signal or tag, which hasn't really meant anything right now. But Death Troopers are 7 health. Shore Troopers are 8, which is a big point on it. Realistically, it's this. Death Troopers are a little bit more aggressive. Shore Troopers are a little bit more defensive. There's a lot of things that are going to break into different ways, but Death Troopers have advance and focus, and Shore Troopers have force dash for the hunker. I want to call out 2 slightly different abilities. Supporting fire dash. This is something we talked about. We have with Kit Fisto. He has this as well. Same general thing. And which is going to make these guys super interesting and very, very supporty. And we're going to talk about Garrison Force, which just adds a little bit more. And they also have the great ability, when they're contesting a unit, they have steadfast and protection. And by the way, so as long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they have steadfast protection. And it's also character in the unit. So if one is on a point and the other one is not on a point, they do both have it. Sam, give me some compare and contrast.
So I do want to clarify that, JK. So the character on the point who's contesting has steadfast protection. If you
You're right.
attacked the other one, not on the point, they wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. It has steadfast and protection. You're right. I apologize. I thought it was they have, or this unit has,
Yeah.
but you're correct.
So, some interesting things here. Supporting fire is a better support secondary ability than anything the shore troopers have. And I think it's going to be very important to Krennic, who is very slow, right? So Krennic only has his advance. He's going to need this dash from Death Troopers to get places. So I think that is very important. However, shore troopers just are so much more of a pain to deal with. Steadfast is a really big deal. It's especially on a two-body support unit, it can be really hard to dislodge two steadfast units from an objective. And when they also have protection and 8 health, they're going to be really, really hard to chip down. Like that extra health is a big deal. So if you just want really sticky bodies, these are the way to go. If you want a really powerful support ability that helps slow units like Krennic, you're going to play Death Troop.
Yep. The Death Troopers also have the protective detail, which gives out cover, and that's really interesting. These guys are super interesting because I think they are both really good on paper. You want to run both. There's no bad answer. Sometimes you see one and you go, well, that's clearly better than the other. But anywhere you throw these guys in, I don't know where they fit in terms of the Stormtrooper hierarchy, but they're close.
Dark Troopers.
Yeah, they're not Dark Troopers. After that, they are probably right there. Let's get into their trees because that's going to also inform a lot of stuff. The Death Troopers have that same style of tree as the support, callus, and escort, where it's kind of split top and bottom. Theirs is just not as good, but the top has damage and pin. The bottom has disarm and shoves, whereas the Shore Troopers, I've got to go really slow here because I'm going to screw up all of the names. They have a later push on 3, and they have a pin, and if you're going up top, you have pin disarm, which is a fun, annoying supporty ability, but they both have fine defensive expertise. They have very good, that 5 dice offensive expertise of 1 expertise for 2 hits are both really good. They're very similar. They have been built very similar and very interesting. Sam, which one of these do you like more? What issues do you have? And where are you leaning in the comparison between the two?
So, comparing their 2 trees here, if you're looking at just their trees by themselves, I think the Death Troopers have the better tree. However, the Shore Troopers have access to Sharpshooter. And if you get that focus off, the Shore Troopers will be doing more than the Death Troopers will be doing. Which actually means I think they play very well together. Because as I mentioned in the Kit Fisto episode, supporting fire frees up the action economy to get that focus off. And so if you have them together, the Death Troopers can use some supporting fire on your Shore Troopers, give them the little movement they need, free up that action to allow them to focus, and they can make 8 dice attacks instead of 6 dice attacks, which will allow them to hit that shove on 3 and get further down their tree. So I like the expertise for both of them, both on the ranged attacks. For 1 result, you get 2 strikes. And they have very similar defensive profiles, with Death Troopers just being a little better. I think these are very comparable units. I think my preferences really depends on the list. If I am playing Krennic, Death Trooper is who I lean to. If I am not playing Krennic, if I'm adding them into Darth Vader's squad or the squad next to Krennic, I think I want Shore Troopers there just to have that really beefy defensive unit.
Yep. I think that sounds right. Obviously, we've moved fairly quick through them because Shore Troopers have more stuff. They have a lot of other things. And as you see, the tail end of the Shore Troopers has 1 billion heals. Not really 1 billion. Three on the bottom, 2 on the top. But they can really take a lick in, and they're going to be a little tankier. But again, it's just going to come down to how you build your list. So, Sam, let's talk about where they fit, what it fixes, does it fix anything, and what kind of lists they're going to be in. I have been looking at, so I'm going to go really quick and talk about 9 squad points is really interesting in the timeline that we're in because it opens up a ton of bounty hunters. Even if you're not running pure Empire, you probably want to balance it in there, but you could get Boba in there, who is an Emperor thing. I've actually looked at the idea of running Krennic, who has a lockdown, with Lobot, who has a lockdown, with Moff Gideon, who breaks ties, with Vader 2, who has that extended ability, or Vader 3, sorry. Whew, so many Vaders. And then something like Fifth Brother who breaks ties. And you really turn everything into this objective game of who can break ties and how you can do it and where you can slide things around. And I think there's a home for it. Obviously, the DTS and the supports aren't in there, but that's just like an initial thought of what possibly could come with Krennic. Sam, what are you seeing? What would you do with the lists and how you feel this whole box fits?
Yeah, so looking at fits, what Krennic really does is enables your 5-point secondary. So you can, he enables your Vader 3s, enables your specialists, and Lobot's a great shout out. He can move Moff Gideon, who's also a scoundrel, and he helps with the sharpshooter that shore troopers get. Because if they're making 8 dice attacks because they end near Lobot, they're going to be putting out a lot more damage and be a lot more consistent. So Krennic has some really interesting things he can do to enable your 5-point secondaries. And I think that's kind of like the fixes, right? Like Lobot's super interesting there. Vader 3 is super interesting there. Plus Vader 3 kind of helps with that force because it refreshes one. So I think those are super interesting lists. I love that idea, JK. I need to try that. I think more of the like traditional things you can look at. These guys help General Veers out a bit because he really doesn't want to be running snow troopers. You can replace them with one of these troopers and have him bring Sergeant, right? Because snow troopers are always bad, right, when you play them with them. And here's some others,
Yep.
some other troopers that helps fix that. I think that there's a wild list could be Thrawn Krennic control, where you're playing 4 force, and you can have Krennic stay in arrogance because nobody's ever going to wound him because then you give them all their force back. So you're just getting all these force discounts from him, you're getting free reserves from Thrawn, and so you're spending a lot of force without actually spending force, which I think could be an interesting list.
That's fascinating. I didn't really think about that. I was going to bring up, because there's so many underutilized Empire primaries. I know a lot of people use them. I don't want to say that they're not whatever, but Thrawn and Krennic, or Thrawn and Veers, they kind of sit in this weird middle spot. And first off, I just think that the supports here unlock. They make every Empire thing better. That's really how it's kind of feeling. The specialist is going to be interesting because it's going to have a place. It's not the elite, or it's not the Death Trooper escort, just because it's 4 versus 5. If you made them both 4, oh boy, that's a conversation we're going to have for days. But 4 versus 5 just makes it a little bit more interesting. I just think it does a ton. Let's move on. Let's finish this up. What do you think? It's splash, ripple, or thud? Sam, take it away.
I think Krennic is going to be a splash, if only for the fact that I think that he adds a super unique playstyle to Empire, and lots of people are going to play him. I think that a specialist, I think he's a ripple. I think he's fighting against a very crowded class of secondaries, and we had Vader 3 just release. I think he's good. I just don't think he's going to have the same impact as the rest of his box, because I think both the supports will also be, especially if Dark Troopers get toned down, then Death Troopers and Shore Troopers become a splash. If Dark Troopers don't get toned down, these guys are going to sit at a ripple because you're just going to bring Dark Troopers to every single game.
Yep. Yeah, I think these guys are garlic. I don't think that they are a steak. I think the overall thing is a splash. I don't know that you're necessarily going to run the box as is. When I say that they are garlic and they're not a steak, is garlic just makes so many dessert or dinners better. They're a seasoning that makes everything interesting. They are not a main course. I don't think that this is a main course box per se, where you roll them out of the lineup and you say, here we go, let's rock and roll. We have the Krennic box. But I just think that every single time you make an Empire list, from the point that these guys come out until buffs or nerfs are made, you're going to constantly say, should I put a shore trooper in here? Or, should I use a dark trooper or the death trooper? How does it fit? Do I want to try to throw Krennic in here and have him try to make up some ground there? Again, I don't think he's not the most important thing, but I think as long as you have him, it's going to be a question that you have to consistently answer yourself. And you're never going to really want to line up across them because they're just going to be good.
I think that's right on point.
Yeah. thank you for joining us. There's so much. Again, we could probably spend a lot more time talking about these, but these box reviews, we want to be a little concise. We want to look into and think about the meta. Sam, any last thoughts on that Krennic box, on where it lands, where it could possibly land? Obviously, we don't know a lot because balance changes are going to do a lot of damage here, but we wanted to get this out before it just to talk about that.
Yeah, and I do want to reiterate, neither of us have actually played with the box. We didn't make it to Adepticon. We didn't get, the early release thing. We're just kind of like spouting off some impressions, and I've played one game against it, right? Because I have a local player who got some stuff from Adepticon. So that's what we have. Our takes here, I think, are pretty accurate, but we've been very wrong before. So things can be very different, but I'm very excited to see how it actually comes out in the wash after the release and after the balance updates.
But totally agree. And this is why I bring Sam, because he's normally right about things where I'm normally wrong about things. And yeah, I think there's something to Krennic. I don't know what it is. The irony is, a couple weeks ago, we talked about Fulcrum, a month ago or whatever, and we believed that Fulcrum was going to be this huge thing. And she is really struggling to find her footing. And I think Krennic, in theory, could be in that same spot where, yes, it's something. Do we have any idea what it actually is supposed to be? I don't think so yet. And that's okay. Like, that's perfectly fine. I think Lumi is something that kind of went through that originally, where she was very fine and then has just consistently had this very baseline spot in the world in the meta. But yeah, in the meantime, come join the Slack. Come talk to us. Let us know if you've had experience, what your experience was. Is it good? Is it bad? Are we overrating them? Are we underrating them? We both think that they're going to be important pieces. Are we wrong? Are you going to sit there and tell me that we're wrong? Because you can, and I'll listen. A rate and review. And in the meantime, Sam, thank you for being here.
Thank you, JK.
And we love you all, and we will see you next time. Honestly, depending on as this comes out, the next time might be balance patches. And whoo boy, are we excited for some, not that we don't like the game, but it's going to be, oh man, it's going to be exciting.
I'm excited.
Have a wonderful everything, and see you next time.